It's Damon and Robert's 5 Songs, a podcast starring Damon and Robert. 10 songs enter, 10 songs leave. It's not that kind of podcast.
And we're live, Mr. Allen. And we're live.
Yes.
Yeah, again, here we are. Welcome.
If we were dead, it would be a lot less interesting.
It would be.
Be quieter.
It would be, well, that's true. It would be
Yeah.
less of a podcast, I would think.
That's right.
Right?
More of just long silence.
That's right. More of just
long silence.
Silence of the grave. Well, welcome back, folks. We're here again. This is our, 5th episode, Robert? Can that be
5.
true? 5.
It's the $5 foot long of episodes.
That's right. It's the 5 roast beef sandwiches for $5.55. So I picked 5 songs. You picked 5 songs. We've done this 5 times now. So we have 50
That's
songs
a lot of songs
on our list. That's a lot of songs, man. That's pretty cool.
That is,
I'm
in fact,
excited.
A lot of music you can't live without. Or
That's right.
I can't live without. I don't know if you can live
That's
without
right. I mean, we would not want to live without it. Let's say that.
No, absolutely.
Given our druthers, I think we would rather live with this music. So,
absolutely.
Would you like to do the numbers real quick here and see what we came up with this time?
Yes.
I got
Educate
Robert,
me.
I'll do my best here. Robert's earliest tune, 2003. Robert's latest tune, 2021. So a pretty, 2000-y kind of, you're in the modern age for surezies. And my earliest tune, Damon's earliest tune, 1978, which is pretty standard by now, I think. And Damon's latest tune, 2009. Yep. So within the last 20 years, not, I don't know. I feel like anything after 2000 is modern. Is that universally accepted?
That's fair.
Okay.
I mean, if you're Gen Z, then no.
I know. Yeah,
we're Gen X,
exactly. I feel like we're the generation for which time went one way up until the year 2000 and now behaves completely differently after the year 2000.
Yeah.
So,
totally fair.
Yeah.
Yes, when people say 10 years ago, we are firmly thinking it's the 90s.
That's true. And it always will be the 90s 10 years ago. That's right.
Exactly.
So now this is an interesting confluence, though. Robert's list this time, total runtime, 22 minutes, 10 seconds. Damon's list, 22 minutes, 57 seconds. Less than a minute apart in our runtimes. Never been that close before.
No.
In all our other lists, these are kind of our most, in terms of length anyway, our most comparable list thus far. Interesting.
And my shortest, certainly.
It is certainly your shortest. You do. That's true. A lot of and I think in that sort of in the genre of music that you like, they do tend to write longer songs, right? And tend to allow themselves some some space for those movements and whatnot. So yeah, an interesting twist this time compared to some of our other lists. Who should we start with?
You know what? Let's let you go first.
All right.
I'll
good.
Sleep over here for another 5 minutes.
There you go. Go close your eyes and rest a little bit, sir. I will talk about the first song on Robert's list, which is the Leaving Song, Part 2.
It feels like this should be the last one, shouldn't
it? It does, but the Leaving, right? The checking out song. Yeah. I'm gonna buck tradition and do it first.
Very good.
By AFI from the 2003 album Sing the Sorrow, I believe. So yeah, one of maybe I think the earliest thing on Robert's list this time. This is my first notice about the main riff, which is immediately like hooky and just like grabs me. So like it's got like whoever wrote that guitar hook, it's throughout this song and it's just amazing and it sucks you in right away. The guitar tone here, and actually I'm gonna probably say this more than once today. The guitar tone here, it's heavy, but it's not like super heavy. It's like 80s, 90s heavy. It's like heavy to me, but it doesn't sound like super genty heavy like some of the things we've heard. I think there's a different
not oppressive.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's not like it doesn't feel like somebody's dropping it on my head when I hear it. But it's also like really melodic, like and feels really melody driven, which I dig. Um, and yeah, that I keep mentioning in my notes here the central riff because I'm still kind of bopping to it while I'm listening at this point. And the vocalist here is fun to listen to. He doesn't have, and this is not meant to sound crappy in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't have what I would consider like a traditionally like singer voice. It's like a little more nasally or like a little squeaky maybe, but he's so good with it. Like the stuff, like I never for a moment think that like this is a guy who doesn't know how to use that instrument that is his voice. Like he's really good, made a believer out of me, which I really like. I like guys who have like like what I would consider like non-traditional, non kind of like pretty singing voices who really know how to use it. And this guy sounds like that to me. And there's there's some delicate parts here which make it kind of sonically mysterious, or there's some sort of like spacey kind of mystery to it. I also use the words dramatic and operatic, and I noted that I use the word operatic a lot when I listen to the tunes you send me. Like, it's just a descriptor that comes to me, and I don't know if it's fair or valid, but it's like something that, yeah, there is something about this music kind of summons sort of a big and majestic kind of feel to me. And yeah, I just really love. I kept coming back to how hooky and catchy this is. It's really tightly put together, and I'm not sure what the narrative is exactly. It's pretty clearly like some kind of self-loathing narrative. I think like, oh, the monster I've become, or I've done something I can't. I've internalized something I can't get rid of, or maybe like a possession thing. I can't exactly tell, but I mean the sense of it comes across really well, like the emotion of it between the tune and this guy's voice. Um, I definitely feel it. Um, but yeah, I've never heard of these guys. I don't know. I know nothing about this band. It feels really um, kind of more modern to me in some ways, but also has a sound that sounds a lot like the 80s and 90s metal that I was like. It doesn't sound, like super dark or like super chunky like some of that the more modern stuff sounds to me. I don't know. I'm probably not making any sense now, but does tell me about AFI and the Leaving Song Part 2. Is there a Part 1? I didn't go back and look.
There is a part one. It is a lot more kind of melancholy
Yeah.
and slower paced or whatever else. This one is more of an angry. I'm out. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're done. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
horrible person. You're also a horrible person.
We are
I've
both
done
horrible
things I'm
people.
not proud of, but I'm leaving.
Mhm.
AFI, it's means a fire inside, although it's not
Oh,
really an acronym
okay.
per se.
Right, yeah, gotcha.
Um, Punk band, California. Used to be very much like the hardcore punk, the
Uh-huh.
screaming,
Yeah.
bad at their instruments and everything else.
The
They
whole 9
became
yards.
they became a lot more of melodic and what do they call that? Like emo.
Yeah.
Um, and like the singer absolutely wears makeup and not like a glam person, but just sort of like on the goth, but more the
Okay.
like a theater
Goth-ish.
kid gone punk
Right,
type thing.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So
Yeah, they're really
yeah,
melodic, like, the melody stuff I love here that it's very melody driven, which I don't think
yeah.
about much in punk music, but yeah, it's really
No,
cool here. Yeah.
they've definitely carved a different path from where they started. They started out
Yeah.
very much in sort of the Green Day kind of poppy punk, but more angry. I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to think of who else would be in that same category. I don't know. But now they definitely, I think, are on kind of a class of their own. There's probably other bands that are similar to them that are in that emo punk range, but I like it. I think it's
Yeah,
really
I don't
cool.
know, I really liked it. I thought it was, yeah, it's, I made a note. I'm like, this is one of those like random Damon things where I'm like, is there like a vague kind of Anthrax vibe here somewhere? Or am I just making that up? Because I listened to a lot of metal in the '80s, and Anthrax was
Yeah,
some of it. Like, there's some at some point between the combination of his voice and the arrangement, I'm like, I had like an Anthrax moment just for a second. I'm like,
interesting.
wow, I haven't had one of those since I was 16. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was real easy to kind of get swept up in it, and the melody just kind of like picks you up and moves you. And I really like that guy's voice. So
Yep.
yeah, I really like that one. That one was a grabber for me.
Davey Havoc, who's also been oddly a very alternative male model because he's like covered in tattoos. I mean, he's not your traditional male model. But he's done some stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he had like a clothing line. I mean, it's
okay.
They do their own thing. They carve their own path.
Interesting. AFI. Yeah. It seems like I mean, other than AFI being the American Film Institute, I think I may have actually heard.
It's very different. Yeah.
It's very different.
Their albums
Why do I
tend to
know
be a lot more score?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, the Leaving Song, Part 2, 2003. It's a good one.
Great song. Great album. The whole album is actually really exceptional.
Nice. Is there something about that song in particular that makes it rise to the top for you above the other stuff on that album?
That's a good question. We've talked about this before, that there are some albums that I just find the whole album is hard to pick out one
solid.
Thing. Two things. One, I think that's really the most aggressive song on the album. And of course, I'm a man of aggression.
Like that.
And it has this really outstanding music video of them playing live. And they just invited some people to come make a mosh pit in an empty theater. And it is the most aggressive, unscripted, like wrestling match you've ever seen. Like,
nice.
They're like, all right, just play it up for the camera. And people are like trying to knock teeth out. And
it's a
little rough.
But, they really come out swinging, so to speak.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good times. Very good.
Thank you, sir. Very good. AFI. Nice.
AFI. All right. So you're number one this episode. I want to say this week, but I caught myself.
Good job this time.
I still made reference to it. All right. Nashville Radio by John Langford, who I'd never heard of either.
Understandable.
I think I want to make note first. My sidebar. I have a couple sidebars, but we'll get them.
That's good.
You definitely had a theme this episode, I think, of distorted expectations. From my perspective, I went into these songs not knowing where to go, and as I listened to them all, I'm like, none of them were quite what I expected them to be.
Interesting.
They all went either in a direction I didn't see, or a swerve, or both, and then
Okay, interesting.
So this one, the sound is very much. I thought it. And this is not my area of expertise, but I thought it was like some pretty standard mild honky tonk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 4/4 beat. The vocals are higher than the mix of the instruments. That's pretty normal.
Pretty standard.
Gets a little bit more instrument forward in the back half. There's some extra piano tinkling and some guitar. I wouldn't call it a guitar solo, but maybe it might qualify for that.
Guitar-ish, yes.
Yes, yeah. So let's talk story. I think the lyrics, despite not sounding like it, are very outlaw country.
Yeah.
It sounds more traditional. It doesn't really sound that kind of more tough bikery edge outlaw country, but I think it's still there. Sidebar number 2. I think this singer rolls his R's a bit, which kind of caught me off guard. Like he had a little bit of dag nabbit Mexican
performing
bands.
Like mariachi,
mariachi.
There you go. Yeah.
I was like, That's a little something weird.
It is very noticeable. It's very noticeable.
So the song is hard living. It's pills, it's booze, it's bad behavior, and it's all kind of based around the focal point being the Nashville radio. Listening to it, being on it, being forgotten by it.
Yes.
And side note number 3 now. I think this song, and I think it's really interesting, it's not particularly moored in time because it talks about the singer being dead and gone, and then it goes back to the singer being in jail. So he sort of bounces around in a unreliable, very unreliable narrative.
Very unreliable.
But he's dead, and he only realizes how many friends he has at his funeral. But, and I thought this was a neat note, it could go either way because he doesn't really give a number, and he doesn't really say if he's pleased or he's dismayed by the count of people at his funeral.
I never knew how many friends I had.
Right. It could be I didn't have any.
0. Right. Exactly. Right. That's a good point. He doesn't say.
It's really easy to think about that rock musicians invented debauchery, but nothing could be further from the truth.
That's right. That was already there.
Booze and drugs are as ancient as vices come. Smoking opium was all the rage throughout a lot of periods of history. I mean, we certainly did not invent that.
Absolutely.
I imagine there are lute songs about smoking opium. That's whatever they want to call it.
That's right.
I did look it up. The oldest evidence of smoked opium, they did use it for medicinal purposes and for suicide purposes prior to this. But 1100 BC, there's evidence of them smoking opium in the Middle East.
Wow. All the way back to 1100.
1100 BC.
Wow.
I mean,
1,300 years ago.
That's a long time.
That is a long time.
And in the modern era from 150 years ago,
Right.
blues and jazz musicians were famously into all sorts of drugs long before Motley Crue was snorting anything that couldn't get out of their reach.
Exactly. That's
So,
right.
so this is a
Oh,
hard living country, alt country honky tonk song. How did you learn about it? Where did you hear it? What's the story?
so John Langford is Welsh. He's a Welsh musician who lives in
What?
Chicago and loves country music. And he's sort of yeah, so he's kind of a
Unexpected.
kind of a sort of a weird iconic character. He was most famous actually in Chicago for fronting a punk band called the Mekongs, which, if you were into punk music in Chicago, you probably knew about, but otherwise didn't. But he's always been kind of really interested in country music. He's also a painter of great skill. So if you're ever interested in looking at his illustration, he does like his album covers or all his own illustrations.
Huh.
But he's he's fascinated in kind of like what he considers the death of country music, which he sees as Nashville kind of killing country
Okay.
music. And a lot
Interesting.
of his work is sort of like looking back at that. And this particular album was one of the first ones of his that I heard, and it's sort of a really broad concept album called All the Fame of Lofty Deeds, which is a great title. But it's about sort of a Hank Williams type character who sort of sells his soul and gets taken advantage of by the Nashville music machine. And that's sort of like a metaphor that he uses time and again for kind of what has become of this sort of music, which he
Hmm.
sees as kind of getting sold out into this kind of soulless commodity, whereas it started as something that was, really kind of precious to the people that were making it and meant something. So, and that's a message that resonates with me some, as we've
Yeah.
talked before. I like a lot of elements of country music, but sort of what it's become, particularly in the 90s and forward, is I'm like, that's not what
It's
interests me
it's a
about that
weird
music.
branch off of pop.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a very nicely crafted type of pop music, but it's really controlled, and I don't think it is what a lot of us loved about it, and certainly not John Langford. So this song, as you said, kind of, you know, maybe to our earlier episode too, where he talked about, this life's not great for everybody. Well, here's
Yeah.
another song about a guy, who and through this one, through some fault of his own, it doesn't sound like the narrator's blameless in
No.
what's happened
No.
here,
Yeah.
but clearly kind of swept up along with it and is in this sort of position where, it's just, yeah, I love that. There's a shiny star on the dressing room door, but I'll be out in the back of my car because I don't know a
Yeah.
soul I can trust with the money or to tune up my guitar. This idea that, you become famous and people look up to you, but the more that you become more isolated or like, like
Paranoid.
paranoid, yeah, that you can't
Yeah.
trust anybody, that like nobody's really on your side. Um, so yeah, I love John Langford's voice. I love the style of it. To your point, like it's a real kind of straightforward honky tonk tune, but it's got like a couple like crunchy sort of like big hit moments too, where I'm like, oh, you can
Mm.
tell that maybe this guy was in a punk band sometime
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But it does have
There
that
was a
kind of,
little something
yeah,
that was not quite. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like it feels a little like out of place. So I'm like, oh, yeah, there's sort of a heaviness to it sometimes but I like that. And I like his voice. And as you said, he
Yeah.
rolls those R's, and I don't know if that's an affectation of his Welsh accent or something else, or I only really notice it here. But, but yeah, I think he's a good Chicago artist, and he was kind of my gateway into a lot of Chicago sort of alt country people. He was on a label in Chicago called Bloodshot Records that a lot of folks like Nico Case, the Handsome
Mm.
Family, the old 97s,
Foreshadowing.
yeah, exactly. There's some other folks on this list on that list. So yeah, I found him, I think originally probably through an album of Johnny Cash covers that he did, which is
Ah.
amazing. And I kind of got into a lot of Johnny Cash music through him and those covers, and then kind of circled back and found his albums too. So, and I like this country kind of stuff. He does tons of punk stuff too, which, if is not my thing, but might be for folks who are into that kind of thing, pretty cool too, I would imagine.
Very good. That's
Yeah.
a good choice. I actually again, it subverted expectations of, I was expecting it to be one thing. And I think it's interesting too, like the concept of pills and booze and hard living as being kind of a self check. Are you really, you're a
Yeah.
musician, sure, but can you be a musician?
You a real musician.
Can you survive the Johnny Cash experience?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly, the whole Hank Williams fun pack. Can you
Right.
take all
Yeah.
the drugs and all the booze in the back of the Cadillac and not die? Yeah. What was that? Hank Williams 29 when he died. It's a ridiculous story. Like a man
Right.
who's very talented and dead far too young. But yeah,
And not a story that hasn't repeated itself.
no,
many
exactly
times.
right. Yeah, I was going to say it's certainly not a unique story, right? But yeah,
Right,
interesting
right.
to hear it kind of recast to your point, from the country music point of view, because we forget that, like, oh yeah, like those guys were whacked out on as many drugs as anybody else was, and yeah,
You
we think about it, with the Who, smashing up hotel rooms,
right.
but that was old news by then. And Johnny had already smashed all the lights out of the Grand Ole Opry long before that, right? Yeah. Anyway, yeah, country music, plenty of
Hellraisers.
outlaws.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, speaking of country music, no, that's not a transition at
That's
all.
terrible.
Sorry, I just making sure you're paying attention. And he is.
Yep.
So let's talk about song number 2 on Robert's list today. Underneath Days by Bob Mould. I haven't heard Bob Mould's name. I had a roommate in the 90s in college who was a big Bob Mould fan. But like, yeah, I was just happy to see Bob Mould's name. I'm like, oh. And plus, I've heard him in the news recently because Tim Walz is from Minnesota. So they're talking to a lot of Minnesota musicians. And he was a Husker Du fan, too, as it turns out. So anyway.
I mean, how could you not be?
Exactly, precisely. Maybe, although I say that, but I don't actually know any Husker Du music, which is a bit of a limitation. So this is all my first note. This might be the first song I can remember that starts with the word "fuck." It's the first lyric. Fuck, fucked. First word. I don't know. Is there any other? I was racking my brain. I'm like, is there another song that starts with the word "fuck"? Because I can't think of one, but maybe there is. If you know of one, shoot us an email, or if you can think of one, Robert.
We've now earned our explicit label this week.
That's right.
Month.
We have.
Damn it.
That's right. Month, week. It's okay. Whatever it is. Anyway, musically, this is kind of. I think it's like the tight, kind of somewhat sludgy, kind of '90s sound that made Bob Mould famous, as I recall. And I do a little Bob Mould music, but I don't really know any Husker Du music. I'm a bit ashamed to say so.
How about Sugar?
That's my Sugar. I knew a little bit. Like we, my crappy '90s college band covered "I Can't Tell You Why" from one of those Sugar albums.
There you go.
Yeah, that was a great tune. So yeah, so I know a little bit, but yeah, not a deep background I'm coming from here. But I gotta say, like musically, I know that what I know of Bob Mould is that sonically, like musically, he is well respected and gets a sound that I don't think anybody else quite gets. But I gotta say, the gold for me on this one is his vocal melody is like off the hook. It's really fun. Like he's not British, right? Because he's from Minnesota, but there's something.
Correct. Well, I think he's New York, then Minnesota.
Okay, New York, then Minnesota.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he's definitely not British. But he sounds like he's got like some of that like husk, the British vocalist. I don't know. I love the vocal on this, and it's it's fun to see the different ways he sort of like weaves that vocal melody over what's kind of a simple but driving sort of guitar part, right? The music is like really tight and pretty chugging the whole time.
Yep.
But the melody sort of lilts over it in a lot of fun ways. And lyrically, I like this kind of rub that it gets because it sounds kind of like an angry kid song. But he's not an angry kid. He's an old man now, and there's some of that too. So but I like that. It's like the anger of like a young kid coming out of the mouth of like an old guy. It's like some of the things he says sound like things like a little kid or like a teenager would say. Like, you never want to let me go my own way. Never want to let me find out for myself. But then there's other things like, you never get out of my way when I say you never stand in your shadow. Like, you never stand in your shadow is a cool line too. I'm like, I have to stand in your shadow. You don't have to do that. So there's this, yeah, it's clearly like
Right.
sort of like feel like some like kicking against a relationship that feels unfair, but there's also this kind of like punky kind of kid, like, I'm just pissed. The unfair sort of a fairness of life kicking at it. So yeah, it's tough, but it's also fun. And it has this this is a little tricky to hear if you're not listening to it in headphones, but it has this kind of cool whispery sort of part. There's like another sonic thing going on behind kind of the driving instrumentation, but there's sort of like some whispering or some yeah, it's just like a different sort of space going on behind it when I was listening in the headphones. That was actually true of the Leaving song too. Like, there's some cool whispery parts in it.
There's good production on both of them. Yes,
There really are. Yeah, yeah. And I like that, like when you have like there's sort of like the main sounds that you're paying attention to, and then you have sort of, some competing sound in that space. I like that. And I think it works really well
yeah.
here. And it worked really well in the Leaving song too. So yeah, I really like this. It's a lot of fun. I mean, lyrically it's pretty simple, but it's one of those songs that I don't think you can listen to it and not be singing along with it. By the end, I was like, within like 2 minutes, I was singing the refrain at the end with him swearing in my kitchen like nobody's business. So tell me, Robert, tell me about Bob Mould and this pick, and what it is that gets Underneath Days onto your list.
So I've been a fan since Sugar. I actually was
Yeah.
also not introduced into Husker Du until much later.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike them, but they are very different from his later work.
Okay.
I mean, they were punks, but they were punks who were like, can we break land speed records, which is the name of one of their albums,
Yeah.
with our music?
Yeah.
Like, can we play guitars until our fingers bleed into fountains?
Right.
Because we're going, and they did. I mean, that was a very good thing.
That's awesome.
And I also found it really interesting that Husker Du, there was a lot of anger in the band, not just because they were young kids, but because the drummer and Bob Mould, the singer, hated each other.
Oh,
Like, they had
really?
this huge animosity. Yeah. And the drummer has since passed away. But like for a very long time, there was just animosity between the two of them. And I don't know exactly where it started. There's this cool book on punk and kind of the major pillar stone bands of punk that I read. Gosh, it's been a while now. One of the things that's very interesting, at least I thought so.
Yeah.
Bob Mould is an openly gay man. The drummer, openly gay. Neither of them openly gay at the time. I think they were both closeted. And I'm not even sure if it was clear that they knew each other were gay. But just anger, just a lot of hostility, and it came out in their music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
So he's a guitar god. I mean, he plays his very own style. Yes. It's funny because even though he's this guitar virtuoso, he's now doing a lot of electronic music. He has an electronic music project called Loud Bomb, which is Bob Mould rearranged.
Interesting. See what you did there.
It's true. He did.
Nice.
I can't take credit.
Yeah, I know.
I will, but I shouldn't.
You shouldn't, but we will. Yeah, that's Bob Mould. Interesting. And so you stuck with him after Sugar?
Yeah. So not all of his albums do I find as compelling as others. Sometimes I think he can fall into that prog rock wankery side of the house sometimes. And there's albums that I think there's one or two good songs, and there's a couple that he could have used an editor probably.
Yeah.
But this one is really solid. This song I think is exceptional. I think this song is about a relationship that's probably run its course.
Yeah.
That the person is seeing, probably we haven't been good for a long time. Probably all these things that I have ignored, I can't ignore them anymore. I kind of thought at first it was because the ending line is, "You never want to say I do," was like, you don't want to marry me, you don't want to really make a commitment to be together. But I also go ahead. Oh, coffee first, very important moment.
Sorry, nope. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's all good. I think that as a result of seeing that there's not going to be a commitment here, all the other dominoes start to fall of, well, you also screwed me in the following ways. Let me count the ways that I'm angry at you now.
Let me review.
Yeah.
In review, here's wow, you've ruined my life.
You suck.
You suck, and here's the list why. Yeah, it definitely, it works as just like a nice, angry song. Yeah, but man, it's a lot of fun. I really do like it.
You wouldn't think I'm a nice person based upon my musical choice.
Okay, hey, we get,
and I'm not.
Right, we get. So you'd be right. Kudos to you, clever thinker.
Accuracy, yeah.
Nice. All right, underneath.
Let me see if I can
Bob
segue
Mould,
this.
2005. Let's see.
All right. So, this is After We Shot the Grizzly by the Handsome Family, who I'd heard of before, but I don't think any of their music.
Heard any of their music.
Probably from one of your social media postings about the Handsome Family.
Probably.
And I went, hey, that sounds like something.
Hey, that's a thing I know.
So this one is very much a slow burn, which I think is true for the next 4 songs, honestly.
Probably true.
It's got very sedate guitars. It's either got a mandolin or a banjo, maybe both. Some very gentle snare brushing. It's a little bit of a sleepy kind of background. It's kind of a little dreamy. Kind of.
Yeah.
The second line is when the airship crashed. So you know something weird is going on. That's not...
Right. That's not a line you see very often. Normally. That's right.
No. This song is a tragedy where we've slowly dwindling party of survivors stuck on an island and trying to make it to safety. Okay, so we've got Gilligan's Island with an airship.
Right, exactly.
Yep. Right. But there's just bad stuff happening left, right, and center. Sidebar number 1 of this song. I first thought in the third verse it was the cat caught a fever. We tied him to a tree.
Oh, the cat. Yes.
And it made a lot more sense when you learned it's captain and not cat. Although
that's an
I guess you learn how my brain works. Yeah.
It's an image I'll have now.
So the chorus structure starts off with "Yes, Mary," and then it's a repeat of the previous line.
Yes.
And that refrain gets very haunting because it's also. So I understand the Handsome Family is a husband and wife duo.
Correct.
And he sings lead on all of this, but she sings backup for those parts. And she's got a very nice accompaniment. She's got this lovely lilt.
Yeah.
But it's disturbing. It's sort of like it's kind of like apologetic "Yes, Mary." It's
Yeah.
You actually learn at the end that our narrator is talking to someone who is dead, possibly from cannibalism. It's not really clear on that point, but it's very possible.
Right.
So it's a dark, dark song that you don't see coming. It's going weird, but you don't see it going as bad as it goes, where they have to leave some people behind, where the sea voyage is so bad that the captain just kills himself, which again, I guess he recovers from the fever, or they don't care. I'm not sure which.
Exactly, or he's still fevered. Right.
Yeah. Oof. And then the other 3 of the people who are not the narrator either jump in the sea to, not take up the food or not take up space on the raft, or he eats them. It's not clear. We don't know. Yeah.
That's right. But at the end, he's the only one left, it seems.
And he's singing to Mary, telling her the story of woe that she probably was there for most of.
Right?
Or not. We don't know. Again, there's a lot of unknowns.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's true. It's both very specific and very vague.
So Handsome Family.
Handsome Family. So yeah, this is another one of these sort of following on from John Langford, another Chicago sort of alt country band. They live in New Mexico now, but and have for a number of years. But yes, it's a husband and wife duo. Brett and Rennie Sparks are the Handsome Family. And Rennie Sparks writes most of the songs and sings backing on some of them, and her husband Brett writes the music and sings most of them. And I think Rennie Sparks is just one of my favorite writers, period. Like, she's just amazing. And I don't know where these ideas come from, but this song is delightfully kooky and kind of heartfelt. It's touching in a way, but it's also, to your point, there's it seems like it's taking place in some impossible setting, because like after the airship crash, after we lost the compass, after the radio went dead, there's like all these things that are like, I'm like, wait a minute, what's the time? Are we like in the 1800s, the 1900s?
Yeah.
Where are you lost? Like it seems like almost like an expedition in like old, like getting lost in America, like and all the terrible things that happen to explorers when they're looking for something. But it's very vague. You never
Except
know
that
where it
Grizzly and
happens.
Antelope don't
Right,
live together.
Grizzly, yeah, right. Except for the
Yeah.
reference to Grizzly and the antelope, that's kind of it. But so I
Yeah.
love that kind of weird mystery. I'm like, where is this? And I guess it doesn't really matter. Let's go along for the ride and see what happens. But
Right.
but yeah, it's very much like this weird survival horror story. And my sense is always that he's like that maybe the whole narrative is sort of framed as like our narrator like writing a letter back to Mary, as if like to tell her all the
Mm.
terrible things that's happened. But to your point, you don't know. It's never, Mary is never explained as a character, never
Well, she's
like
in the waves.
that's right. He sees her in the
Yeah.
waves at the end, which
Right.
makes me think, is he going to jump in the water next? Is he the next one to jump
Uh,
off the boat, like losing, is that like an illusion or like a mirage that's luring him in his desperation off the boat? So
I was sort
anyway,
of thinking he saw
yeah.
her bones because he threw her
'Cause he
bones into
threw
the.
bones.
That was,
See, that's even, I love
my
that. That's
mind goes to
developer.
cannibalism.
Yes, and it's clear that he's eaten somebody, at least one
Right.
somebody, by the time, because he talks about drawing the straws, right? One by
Right.
one, we drew our straws till only I remained. Yeah. So I love kind of the juxtaposition too with the music, which is just kind of very lilty and a little jazzy.
Yep.
And about this terrible thing that's unfolding, this terrible story
Donner
that, to your
Party of
point,
Five. Yeah.
exactly, just gets like worse and worse and worse. So there's just so much that I like to listen to here. I love the story and kind of the kooky way that it never quite fits together. Like I don't know where we are or when
Yeah.
this is happening or what, like who these people really are. And so I end up with kind of like a vague idea in my head based on probably a lot of old TV shows that I watched as a kid of, expeditions stumbling through the jungle and
Right.
whatnot. But yeah, I just really like this. Rennie Sparks is one of those people who can write a song about something that I wouldn't think you could write a song about and make me care about it. I'm like, I kind of care about what happens to this guy by the end, and I don't think it's good. I don't think he has a good ending. I think this is like, right
No.
before he probably jumps in the water or just, shuffles off this mortal coil. But yeah. So I like the darkness. I like the kind of the juxtaposition with the music, which seems kind of happy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they're pretty good at that kind of rub between the dark and the sort of snappy and circusy kind of feel that I think this hits the sweet spot for me.
It's a good song. It again subverted expectations nicely
Subverted.
and paid off.
See, and one of my favorite titles too. After we shot
Yeah.
the Grizzlies, just a great title for anything. I'm like, oh yeah, then what happened?
So just a total sidebar to that, but
yes,
I remember reading a story about a guy shot a grizzly and skinned it, thinking he was going to eat it, even though you're not really supposed to do that, and couldn't eat it because he, upon skinning it, saw just a fat man
oh no,
and could not bring himself
oh.
to butcher it and take home the
butcher
meat.
the fat man after he took its coat off, huh?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, dark.
That
Very
is
dark.
that is dark. Ooh,
You're welcome.
thanks, thanks, Robert. Moving on.
You like that stuff.
Well, if I do like that stuff, that's true. It's my own fault.
It's true.
I want it darker. Let's talk about the third. Speaking of darker, The Sin and the Sentence is the third song that I have on Robert's list by the band Trivium. I think maybe that's how you pronounce it.
Yep.
On the
You got
album
it.
from the album of the same name as the song from the 2017 album, The Sin in the Sentence. So this is pretty recent work here for our lists. Okay, my first immediate reaction here is that, man, that drum part's really fast. Like that, the bass drum comes in. It's like I'm like, yeah. I initially had to like start it over. I'm like, what kind of notes are those? Like 30-second notes,
He's got
64
3 feet.
notes. Like,
Yeah,
like it's like it's so blistering fast. Yeah, like it's one of those things where it feels like so fast it's almost like a gag. I'm like, wait a minute, is it really going to be that fast the whole time? And it's not. But later on, it gets replaced by this cymbal thing that's much more subtle, but also super fast. Like if you hear it in the headphones,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, he's still really going there. It's just like it changes the instrument. But this is another one where like I love this guy's voice. And I don't know whether I was just like in an Iron Maiden place or if he sounds a little bit like Bruce Dickinson, but he sounded like that's like, yeah. But it's interesting. He's also got like this kind of beefy, like a beefier sort of voice, and he moves really effortlessly between these kind of higher, readier parts and these kind of smooth growls. Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to struggle to find words to describe his voice, and I came up with tough and sexy. You have like a husky kind of male voice. It's almost, yeah, it's interesting. It's not the kind of voice I expected in a tune like this. I think it's yeah, it's unique, I thought. The music, including the first super fast drums, kind of backs off for the verse, and so it's not constant, which I was glad about because it was a little distracting when it first comes in. I'm like, damn, that's fast. Like it's hard to pay attention to anything except how fast that is. But he does a pretty good job though with bringing it, like kind of taking it away and bringing it back to keep your interest. And I actually get to the point where I'm happy, like in the song, I'm like, oh, it's back. I have my fancy drum part. And there's also at the 3-minute mark, I poked around and I tried to figure this out and I can't without looking at the song itself. The 3-minute mark, there's a solo and it's amazing. And it's modeled off of some other piece of music that I have in my head that I cannot identify.
Huh.
It's something like, I want to say it's like, something like the Hall of the Mountain King, something like that kind of famous, but it's not
Something
that.
classical. Yeah.
Something classical or something that I recognize and being emulated in the solo. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And it really draws me in and makes me curious about what it is. And I'm still in that place where I don't know what it is. But a
Huh.
couple other things. I mean, I love there's like some harmonized guitar stuff here, which I always forget how much I love until I hear it. And it's done really well here, like on some of those solos. And I made this note. It was kind of about, I sort of said this about AFI too, but there's a lot here that seems like um, in the sound of this, that, but even though it's 2017, that would have really appealed to me, like in the 80s and 90s when I was listening to metal. Like there's just a lot here that sounds like it harkens back to that sound for me, which all the more modern stuff doesn't do.
Right.
But this one did. It feel like I said it. This feels like metal I would have dug as a kid. The drums feel a little bit more modern to me in terms of their sensibility, but the rest of the instrumentation feels more like the metal I grew up with. Um, and the message, like I think the message of the song is like pretty straightforward, kind of like religious hypocrisy stuff. Maybe somebody being burned at the stake unjustly. Like there's that line,
Yeah.
they'll genuflect to a lie, is a pretty like telling line, I think. So yeah, I really like this. I'm kind of interested like in this one and the AFI one. I thought these are kind of ones that feel um a little more accessible to me, um who is, into the metal of a different era, I guess, than some of these more modern bands. So I was curious if that's something that resonates at all for you, or if you don't hear it that way, or yeah, I really like this one. Though the Sin in the Sentence by Trivium. What can you tell us about Trivium and this tune?
So they came out, I believe, in the aughts. This is, I think, their 6th album now. They have 2 more since this has
Okay.
come out, even. They started out as more of a death metal band. They came out fully screaming.
Yeah.
He had a little bit of melodic vocals, but mostly the harsh screams.
Yeah.
And I think it tore up his vocals a bit.
Okay.
Like he couldn't sustain it for
Couldn't
his
keep
second
doing it.
album. They went back to more singing, and now they kind of alternate a little bit. I think he's also, when you first get started, you don't generally have a vocal coach saying, you're not going to do that forever.
That's right. You can't do that for a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a very strong Metallica bent to them.
Yeah.
They've covered Master of Puppets. They did a
Okay.
great cover of Typo Negative's "I Don't Want to Be Me" a
Yeah.
couple years ago. This is like a Halloween thing. It was really cool.
Nice.
I really like them. I've had trouble picking one song of theirs.
Yeah.
There were quite a few that was like, So, but I thought this one was a good indication of their general sound. They're very fast. Their drummer
Super
can easily
fast.
do 240 beats a minute, which is insane.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is crazy. Have you seen? There's a whole thing about with bass drumming. Instead of just doing up and down, they do this weird side to side thing so that they can get more.
So you can do like even faster. No, I haven't. I'm still like stuck in the 80s where I'm like, that guy's got 2 bass drum pedals. Woo!
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just gotten like, what used to feel fast to me back then, they were like, no, dude, they've gone way faster. So, yeah.
Yeah, some of the bands get this like machine gun sound out of their bass drums from these guys just doing this crazy swervy thing with their feet.
Oh man.
It's cool, it's awesome, it's terrifying. My ankles hurt just listening to it.
Exactly.
So,
nope. Ooh. No, that
funny.
is a fast drum part, man.
It's awesome. The singer is actually an Asian American. He's really? One of the few Asian American metal singers I'm aware of. I know that there is a metal scene in Japan, but it's not most metal singers. There's exceptions, but they're mostly white men. Actually, there's a rising number of female singers, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing. So he is really good about doing Twitch streams where he either plays video games because that's what Twitch is for, right?
That's what you do on Twitch, right?
Right. Or he'll play songs and he will take suggestions. People will call out songs, in chat.
Yeah. Sure.
And if you donate to him, he will more likely listen to what
your
request
right? Yeah. If you give
but
me
he
money.
will absolutely say, "Yeah, I have no idea how to play this song. I'm going to try and do it by ear. I'm probably going to fuck it up."
Yeah.
There's our explicit rating again.
We've already. That's right.
We've earned it. Yeah. He's pretty good at playing just by ear. He's that good a guitar player and singer where he can just kind of roll with stuff, which is really cool.
No, I really liked his voice. Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. That's kind of a theme with your whole list this time. I think I really loved to answer everybody's voice this time. So it's just really.
It's funny.
It's a vocal heavy list for me this time. Like I really loved everybody's singing voice here.
For the longest time, I couldn't enjoy music if I didn't like the singer. I couldn't appreciate the music, the songs, the lyrics, even if I thought the singer was, abrasive, bad, whatever.
I get that.
I've adapted a little bit more, especially because metal has, so much my kind of metal, abrasive lyrics, the Cookie Monster growling, whatever. But I still like it to be both. I like it to have melodic, cacophonic. That's a word. It's not the pronunciation of the word, but it's close enough.
It's a word.
I like the dips and valleys. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you like to have some variety, right? Some coming and some going.
Exactly.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
What an excellent segue I have done for myself.
Into
How Are You Gonna See Me Now by Alice Cooper, your third song. All right. Distorted expectations, Damon. If you'd have told me, if you played this for me blind and not told me it was Alice Cooper, I'd have been like, I have no idea who that is.
I have no idea who did this.
It could be any 70s singer-songwriter, love song, ballad thing.
Is that Barry Manilow?
Maybe not Barry Manilow. maybe not that one.
Somewhere, south of Barry Manilow, but I get you.
Some of his phrasing is a little bit weird compared to his contemporaries. "See me ugly" is a line that I don't think that would have come up too often. But it's so 70s with the synth and the piano and the little guitar flares. It's so earnest. It's like I was shocked. I was really I was waiting the whole time. Yeah. I thought there'd be a smirk and a joke here somewhere. I thought there'd be the swerve. I'm used to the swerve. Never came. He played it straight the whole time. Defied my expectations. Was this like a real apology song to his wife? Did he play it straight so he just confused people 50 years later? I mean, what? What was the angle here?
So this was written. This is off of his '78 album From the Inside, which he wrote
Not quite 50
after.
years.
Right, not quite 50 years, but which he wrote after checking himself into an asylum to quit drinking. Like he had,
Wow.
yeah, that was again, it was done differently in the '70s, as you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
imagine.
Betty
But
Ford.
yeah, yeah, he checked himself in and wrote wrote an entire album about the experience. Wrote an album about all the people he met in there. So this whole album is basically character songs of different people that he met
Ah,
in the asylum and how sort of how they ended up there. But smattered in there are a couple like autobiographical ish tunes. Um and the other interesting sort of tidbit about this album is he wrote it with Bernie Taupin, who most famous for being Elton John's
oh,
writer, who wrote,
King of
Tiny Dancer.
Schmaltz.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, wrote all those Elton John hits for him early on. And so him and Alice were friends, and they wrote this record together. And it's probably my favorite Alice Cooper album because it's very weird, and every song is kind of different. This was the hit off of it. If there was a hit, he released this as a single. It hit like number 12, I think, which was pretty good.
Huh.
He was having kind of a moment here. He was on the Muppets that year. He had this album out. And he was criticized for it because it's very like a straightforward soft rock, like ballad at best. If
Yeah.
it's like hard to even call it a rock song, really. But to your point, it's got a lot of that like of the era kind of instrumentation. The synthesizers are really prominent.
Yep.
Like musically, it's a weird Alice Cooper song. It does not sound like an Alice Cooper song. It has a music video. If you go to YouTube, you can find the 1978 music video of From the Inside, which
Wait,
does have a little of the twist that you were looking for and not finding in
is
the
there lens
song.
flare? Because I bet there's a lot of lens
I'm
flare.
sure there's a lot of lens flare. There's a lot of like juxtaposed running of like
Mm.
people running towards each other. Anyway, uh, the reason I've included it here, aside from the fact that it is the hit off of my favorite Alice Cooper album, far from my favorite Alice Cooper song, and certainly not the best Alice Cooper song in the world, but it's the one that made me an Alice Cooper fan because I had heard this song when my brother had this album in the '70s, and I remembered liking it, and I wanted to find it again. And when I was old enough to have a bike and I could bike to the record store and flip through all the albums looking to see what record album it was on, I wasn't sure and I didn't know the name of it. So I just started buying old records of Alice Cooper's and would take them home and I would listen to it. And I'd say, it's not on there. But I'm like, but that was pretty good. Let's listen to it again. And so I did that until I finally found this album. But by then I was like hopelessly hooked on Alice Cooper music
I'm
because I
not
kept
disappointed,
buying.
but I'm still not where I want to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, I bought a lot of Alice Cooper albums initially looking for this song, and then once I found it, I'm
Wow.
like, oh, that's okay, but I actually like all these other songs kind of better. So
Kids today,
right?
Soapbox just magically appears, will never have this experience of trying to find a song because that just is not a thing anymore. It's just
No,
now you ask Pandora or whatever.
right.
You hold up your phone near the radio and say,
Yeah,
what is this? And it'll tell you.
exactly. No,
We had it hard. Although when I worked at the record store, we had one of those crazy, you could call up almost any song thing because it had a huge database of
oh
samples. It
yeah,
wasn't the full
yeah,
song,
but it
but you
was a
could hear a
sample,
sample of it, and then you could tell you it's over in Rock
right?
under Queen or whatever.
Oh, that's pretty cool, though. I
Um,
didn't know you could do that.
yeah,
Yeah. See, no,
that
it was
was
just
the late '90s.
I would go to the used record store. There was a place in Springfield called Recycled Records, and it was above a furniture store. It was run by, I think, two brothers who were guys in like bib overalls who would sit down in this furniture store that you would go into downtown, and you would go up these creaky wooden steps, and there were just row after row of bins of records that people had brought in, and they were all used, and some of them were in great shape and some of them were just blown out and scratched all to hell. But you could flip through and everything was like $1 or $2, and you'd walk out
Yeah.
with $10 worth of records and run home and and listen to them. So yeah, it's how I sort of got hooked on Alice Cooper music, was looking for a song. A very similar thing happened to me with Bob Dylan music too. I was looking for a Bob Dylan song that I could never find. By the time I found it, I was like into 10 Bob Dylan albums, and I'm like, this is
I was going to say he was very prolific, so
yeah,
that could be
exactly.
expensive. Yeah.
Precisely. Yeah, it was deep in before I realized the song I was looking for was never released on an album. Huh? It was only released on the greatest hits album.
That's
Yep.
not fair.
Live and learn. Oh well. Like, right? I don't need the greatest
Yeah.
hits album. I bought all the records, right? Nope. That one's not on there. Anyway, that's my How You Gonna
Fantastic.
See Me Now story. I do think it's a neat little like ballad gem from back in the day. And I do think he's a great ballad singer. One of the things I like about him, on top of the, the rocky, known
Yeah.
for the rocking
He's got
thing.
range.
But he's quite good at those two. It's sort of the heartfelt piano number. So dated, and maybe not the best song, but holds a special place for me because it sent me on the path to start. Here I am, all
Very
these
nice.
years later.
Yes.
So let's see. Well, I've got
Still crazy after all these years.
Still crazy after. That's right. We haven't had any Paul Simon yet, have we? Let's see.
No.
Next on Robert's
yet.
list is Eternal Blue, and I hope I got this right. I think the band is Spiritbox, and the
That's
album
right.
is Eternal Blue. Is actually from the
Yeah.
album, the same title as the song, Eternal Blue. This is really recent. It's from 2021. And
That COVID era.
the COVID era. That's right. The COVID years. This one strikes me differently. Like immediately, it opens with kind of like this lo-fi, kind of spacey sort of feel to it. Kind of like almost like a lo-fi pop ballad almost. It's got this great sort of sense of space to it. But then it gets super heavy. Like it surprises me, right? It stays spacey and ethereal, but somehow it's got this like great, like crunchy, super heavy guitar. And it's kind of a cool mashup that I wouldn't necessarily on paper would think would work as well as it does here. But I love it's a female vocalist, and she's got a great voice, like a real interesting voice. And I think her voice is part of the reason that it works, because it floats like kind of just above the range that guitar work is in. So I'm always kind of hearing them together, but I never lose her voice over it. Yeah, it's really well done. It feels like it's very deliberately kind of put together to allow the guitar and her voice to really kind of drive things. And the drums are interesting here too, because the drums sound more to me like drums that I would hear in like house or electronica music, like something like they have like a kind of diffusion about like a poof, like nothing. There's not a lot of like a hard attack like I think of in metal drums. And but it's interesting because sometimes like when it's paired with the guitar it feels that way. So it's interesting, you got this kind of drum beat that the drum sound kind of changes depending on how it's interacting with that guitar. So I really like that. I thought, ooh, because there were a couple times I'm like, ooh, that's a metal drum, like the drums change. I'm like, I don't think the drums changed. I think I'm just hearing them like really tightly with that guitar sound, and it makes the whole thing kind of sound different to me.
Would you say they hit differently?
I would say they hit differently, but crash.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, I like it. It sort of ends in the same sort of ethereal space that it starts in, and makes me feel like I've been on some kind of trip or journey. Lyrically, I wasn't 100% sure what's going on here. But it seems like there's some like, I wish my blood would slow down. It's where you left me to die. There's some things that seem like somebody in distress, like a person like clearly kind of in some flux, or that someone has put them in. But yeah, I struggled to grab more specifics. But this is another one, and kind of true of everything on the list for me this week. I didn't get a lot of like real detailed stories out of them, but the feel here, feel like her voice and the feel of the music really carries it, and it matters less to me in a tune like this, like what the words are, which is a weird thing to hear me say, but it does. Like, I think of more her delivery, and the delivery of that, right, or her vocal with the music, is what really sells Eternal Blue for me. but yeah, I liked it. It was unexpected and a little. It feels like a kind of a fun mashup of genres that I wouldn't necessarily expect. So I wonder if it feels that way to you too.
So this band came out of another band kind of falling apart called I Wrestled a Bear Once, which is a strange name for a band.
It is.
And they're like this like hyper metal but jokey kind of weird mess. Not like jokey Anthrax, who had like,
Okay, right.
the music was straight ahead, thrash, but like their antics were a thing.
They had antics.
This one, like the music is a little bit funny, antics as well as crazy thrash and what screaming or whatever. So this vocalist, I don't remember her name. I think it's Casey something, but I can't swear to it because I don't recall. She can sing like an angel. She can howl like a devil. I mean,
yeah,
she's
it's really good range, man.
A hell of a range. Yeah. And what's also funny is, so she and the husband came from I Wrestled a Bear Once. They're now husband and wife. They met, got married, split off, are doing their own thing now with Spiritbox. This drummer is a kid, literally like he's in his early 20s, and with the band he started like 18, from Canada, who was just sending them, files, and they were mixing in the files. They didn't meet him until I think they recorded the album. Like they were doing demos completely remotely, and then they get there like, they're I think in their late 20s, early 30s. He's 18, and they're like, "You drum like a maniac. You're hired." But damn,
that's right. Wow, that's cool.
This song, I feel like I don't remember. That's one of the downsides to how long it takes us to do an episode. So I don't know who remember the songs.
It's been a while since you sent me this one.
I feel like it's about wishing time would slow down, like things are happening too fast. The hits keep coming.
I wish my blood would slow down. Kind of like everything's sort of going too fast. Yeah, I get that sense for sure.
Yeah, it's all falling apart, and I wish. Can we pause for a minute, please?
Exactly.
This band did one album. It was very heavily. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This is their second album. It was very heavily anticipated. Like they got a ton of metal press. Saying album coming out. Almost every song on it is really, really good by my likings. There's one or two that I'm like, they're okay.
Not as good.
Unfortunately, in this modern era, God damn it. They're now doing almost all singles. Like they just have done 8 or 9 singles, which I suspect at some time will be put into an album. But who knows? Just because, thank you, TikTok, singles do better than albums.
Right. Yeah, that's where the money is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just all bite-sized instead of, the long-form consumptive.
That's right. Back to the soundbite, man.
They're still good.
Yeah. No, they're great. I've never heard of them.
Appreciate them in small tastes. Yeah.
No, that's cool. Eternal Blue by Spiritbox. Really, I'm pretty here just within the last few years too. So yeah.
Yep. And this, like I said, is their second album. I think the first one is from 2019. So they're very, very recent concern.
Nice. Yeah.
I've never heard of your fourth option. Which, am I saying this correctly? Is it Timber Timbre or is it pronounced?
I think it's
Timber.
Timbre, I think is maybe
Amber.
Timbre.
That's one of those words that I've seen and I've never pronounced out loud.
Yes, right. It's one of those words. Yeah, right. It's like I wouldn't know how to spell that word, but I knew how to say it.
And is that the quality of your voice?
I believe so. The timbre of your voice is like the quality or the sort of somebody's voice. Yeah, so it's kind of funny, and you just rearrange the last 2 letters. So
there you go.
Timbre.
So you've given us yet another slow burner.
I like the slow burners,
It's very haunting sounding vocally and musically. I don't think I would assume this was made this century. I really do feel like this could be a 100-year-old song, except it's got, very crisp modern production.
Exactly.
Like if you have to listen to this in your headphones because there's this one part in the middle where this organ starts kind of sneaking in. It's much bigger at the end, but if you don't listen, you don't hear this little creepy organ line as he's singing. The singer, he kind of sounds like he's on his deathbed. I mean, he really is this kind of whisper. It's hard. And the song is about a man who's been scared into repentance. Like but God's been sending him some signals, and he's not been paying attention. This is a great line. It was real, and I repent. All those messages that you sent, clear as day, but in the night, oh, I couldn't get it right.
Right?
So God literally tried to burn him some sense into this boy, because there's a
But
whole thing about he wakes up and the shack is on fire. So he's begging for repentance, but at the same time, he tries by day. He's trying so hard
right.
to undo the bad things he's done,
But
but
at
by
night,
night his demons are coming back out,
it's hard at night,
which happens to all of us. I mean,
Exactly.
let's be
We've all been
honest.
there.
Yeah, it's
Right. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
hard to kneel the whole time. So
Exactly.
tell me about this group, because I'm
Yeah.
completely unfamiliar with their work, but man, this was a song.
Yeah. This, this is a very recent find for me. So this song's from 2009, but I just found it. Like, I found this band in the last 6 months. And they
Okay.
were recommended to me by someone online who we were talking about um uh goth music, and like the darkness, or how the quality of darkness in like some goth music really isn't that dark. Like, it's always like, it's a fine line between like dark and funny, and it's easy to
Right.
step over the line, right?
Yeah,
And
Halloween is sitting right here.
exactly,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, there's like between like horror and kitsch is a fine line, and musically it's hard to walk, right? And we could,
Yeah.
I'm sure both of us could name bands we think manage to do it and don't manage to do it. But he mentioned, he's like, I think that like the music of bands like Timber Timbre is far more unsettling than a lot of that music. And I'm like, I've never heard of that band. So I went out and found them,
Yeah.
and this was the song that I found. They're a Canadian band. They're all sort of musicians in their own right. So this is kind of like a little thing.
They should be
a
way too
project.
nice for this.
They do. They should be. Yes, but they make these very like kind of quiet, very beautifully crafted tunes that are lyrically kind of horrifying and chilling. Like this
Yeah.
one is very mysterious. Like, it's really creepy but quiet. And to your point, like with the headphones on, there's all this sonic stuff that's very subtle. That how, like, where the organ comes up, like you said, like there's just amazing things to be heard. But it kind of feels
Yeah.
like you're being sort of stalked a little by sounds. Like, you do sort of get the sense that this guy is haunted, and not like,
Yeah.
trying to tell you this. And by the end of it, like, you feel a little haunted too. There's something about it. Yeah. And I love like his
I don't believe in ghosts, but I've seen the demon host.
exactly
Yeah.
right. There's that great line at the end, "Oh Reverend, please can I chew your ear? I've become what I most fear. I know there's no
Yeah.
such thing as ghosts, but I have seen the demon host." I'm like, that's such a great line, and like really evocative and full of it's. I don't know what exactly is going on here, but I really believe this guy, and I kind of want to go with him on this little ride. And
Oh no.
acoustically,
You can go alone on that one.
it's pretty
Where he's
creepy,
been, I
right?
don't need to go. I don't need to see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so he's if you like very pretty, scary music, the Timber Timbre, I highly
Yeah.
recommend them. He has another song I like a great deal called "I Am Coming to Paris to Kill You."
Subtle.
Which is very subtle. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you like acoustic, creepy stuff, which I like. That's my Venn diagram, right? It's like, ooh, acoustic
Yeah.
music and like creepy stuff. I'm like right in the middle. And so Timber Timbre is my acoustic, creepy stuff band
Definitely
that
not
I
your
have
first
recently
one in our
found.
series. Yeah.
No, not,
Definitely.
but definitely like one of those ones where I'm like, oh, this band should have been on my radar the whole time. I just didn't know they exist, which is kind
Yeah.
of, one of the downfalls of our modern era, right? There's so much great music. There's probably tons of great music I would love. I'm just never going to find it. So,
The embarrassment of riches. Yes, absolutely.
exactly,
Yeah, I mean,
precisely an
and
embarrassment.
also it's hard to find, because you can't trust when they say, if you like X, you'll love Y.
Yeah,
Maybe,
right.
maybe
Maybe,
not. It's like
maybe,
what you like about X might be completely absent in Y. It's
right.
the algorithm is not perfect in that regard by a
The
long shot.
algorithm is not perfect, and and people are
Period.
asked to like self-apply labels to their own music Like this was
Yeah.
labeled, I think, dark folk, which I'm like, that's okay. I could find, but I could think of probably a dozen other ways I might try to find this too that wouldn't,
Right.
or I wouldn't find it. So yeah, it's just now it's a matter of taxonomy is the reason I can't find songs I love because there's just too many. I need a better system. I need a card
Yeah.
catalog. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think it's too reductive to think that keywording genres. And let me be very clear. Metal is stupid with its subgenre classifications
Sure.
or whatever.
Right.
And this is a great topic actually because I was thinking about this. One of the things that I find comical about metal purists or whatever is they want to put people into these boxes, but like every time, so they make this new subgenre, and let's say it's speed thrash. That's
Right.
not really a thing, but we'll pretend
But
it
sure,
is.
we'll pretend.
So every time that you do that, there's a branch off of that, and oftentimes it's a branch off of something else, so that creates a new sound. So this is like dark goth and speed thrash. So you're gonna have speed
Together,
goth, and then you're gonna
right.
have dark speed goth thrash, and then so yeah, you have this crazy branching meta tree of. And my fingers are not doing good credits.
I understand.
The idea.
Yes, if you're watching
Yeah.
the video now, you're getting the full effect, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. Rob trying to be a data scientist. But the idea is interesting in some ways because it does try to help you find more things that you'll like, but it's also reductive in other ways because you just can't put things into pretty little boxes. It's not music never goes that easily.
Right. Yeah, and increasingly less and less easily, right? At least before when, the radios and labels kind of controlled what music you heard, you could sort of force the existence of stable genres just because they wanted stable genres. But now that anybody can release anything, it's like, well, yeah, I keep hearing some people tell me that genre is dead. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm afraid it's probably true. I mean, like what I used to use genre
if not
for
dead, it's dying.
is kind of, I guess its usefulness certainly seems less to me because I can't just go, oh yeah, I like folk music because I don't like a lot of that stuff. But some of it I do. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of fracturing and it's just a lot more granular now. I think so.
And because there's less gatekeeping possible, because you're right. Now through SoundCloud, through is that the
Bandcamp? Yeah, the Bandcamp is another one where you can put stuff out pretty
anything
easily.
you want.
Whew, yeah, man.
If I would like to record a 3-hour vomiting session, probably not going to sell any records.
It would not even
be the
1,000th weirdest thing on Bandcamp. It wouldn't even make the list, man, of the weirdest thing. But yeah, right. That's true. And Bandcamp's an example because I publish music there, and you get to self-apply your labels, which makes sense. But at the same time, it's really hard because I get to that point and I'm like, I don't know, man. What is this like label wise? Am I being I feel a little disingenuous no matter what I put on there because they're all, I don't know. It's not 100% anything, I guess.
Nothing fits perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you end up kind of
that's what you
tossing a bunch of stuff on there.
You should have a dial. It's like this is a 40% Americana. This is
40% right.
1% alt country. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
30% folk.
Yeah. Yeah. But I say that, but one thing I do like to do is go out there and like click through people's tags and see. I've found, you do find interesting things. Just like if I click the dark folk tab, like what else am I going to find in there? Like what other bands in Europe that I don't know about, or so yeah, there's a real there's sort of a democratizing of it now. But the downside to that is that like our terrible like corporate overlords who told you what to like, they also organized all that shit for you. So you didn't have to go find it, right? Like they delivered it to you. And now that's gone. Like if you want to keep consuming what they're feeding you, that's fine and they'll give it to you. But if you want to go out and explore the world of music that's out there, you're kind of on your own.
There's no map.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly.
You have to blaze your own trail because there's no trail.
That's right.
There's no map to these territories. Yeah.
That's right. Blaze a trail and leave some breadcrumbs behind you. That's what we say.
That's true. And, I do think that maybe one of the things that we're doing here kind of possibly a little bit sort of
maybe.
is
Yeah.
leaving those breadcrumbs.
That's right. We are. I think
Yeah.
maybe kind of sort of we probably are 100% doing
Isn't
that.
that nice of us?
It is. We're just good dudes that way. So I'm going to
Yeah.
talk about Robert's fifth song. I'm at your fifth song.
Yes.
Can that be true? Look at that. Is Strength in Numbers by the band Times of Grace on the album The Hymn of a Broken Man from the year 2010. This opens with like a very marching kind of militant
Mhm.
drumming, which is something I love in like heavy metal. I just no other type of music do this. It's so much fun. But yeah, there's like a very kind
Well,
of
I guess band music
militaristic.
sometimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some Star Wars music maybe. Yeah, but okay, so I have questions. I mean, you don't have to answer them right now, but I'm like, is there more than one singer in this band? Because this guy's got like a super heated. I don't know. Was it harsh voice that we're called? What's the nice way to call it? Not Cookie Monster voice, but harsh
We like
voice.
to run all over the place.
Okay.
We'll say harsh vocals.
Harsh voice. But he's got that harsh voice,
Yeah.
but it kind of comes and goes.
Mhm.
And this is another guy who kind of took me by surprise with his voice. Once the verses start, which is about like a minute into the song, when the verses start, he's got like this real husky kind of bluesy vocal that I did not expect, that hits me from like out of left field. And it's more like kind of a hard rock guy's voice. I wrote the voice it reminded me of was David Coverdale from Whitesnake. Like it's that kind of like husky, sexy kind of voice. I'm like, wow, that guy could really deliver the vocals there. But at the same time, he's got like I also referenced King Diamond. He's got like a voice, like he's like really manages to go like back if it's just one
Yeah.
vocalist, which is why I'm like, man, I wonder if there's more than one person singing here. But just another one on your list this time where the vocalist just really kind of blew me away. The guitar here feels very kind of, again, sort of familiar to my ear. So like more 80s, 90s metal sounds than like super heavy modern ones. Lyrically, I love it. It's just kind of like a pep talk to the troops, right? Like, and
Yeah.
there's some like smattering of like some poetic musings about how cool we are and how terrible our enemies are. They're so devious. It's just a great line about them being so devious, which I love. And yeah, and that super deep, like that harsh voice, it's sometimes hard for me to get into, but I didn't really find it too distracting here. Like this tune's like such a grabber, and
Yeah.
that militaristic kind of beat that it starts with, but it doesn't stick with that all the way through. I mean, it kind of sticks with it, but it does a lot more than that. So yeah, let's see what else I was just checking my last note that yeah, I love like the lyrics. I really like, we struggle, we suffer, so we must come together. It's like a real sort of patriotic kind of like war feel. But yeah, man, I like this a lot. I'm really curious about that singer. Like, is there really just one guy making all that noise with his voice in this band, or is it
So
more going on?
this is Jesse Leach, I think his name is,
Yeah.
from Killswitch Engage. So this is a really
Okay.
funny story because Killswitch Engage did one album with this singer. He then left. He got married. He decided the road life was just not for him. He wanted to be with his new wife.
Sure.
He left the band. They did 3 albums with a different singer, the very powerful Howard Jones.
Okay.
This was a side project between the guitar player and the original singer from Killswitch Engage. So the guitar
Okay.
player does sing backup. He's got a good voice too.
Okay.
But I think it's mostly Jesse that's
Mostly that
the main
one.
voice. And yeah, he does. He's got a really high range. He's got that really growl range, and he's got a nice kind of mid timbre. I would never have identified it as David Coverdale, but I'm trying to think, and I'm like, yeah, I
Go
can
back
kinda
and
see
listen
it.
to it again.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not 100%, but it's it's
Yeah.
more that kind of voice, like a voice that's
Yeah.
got like kind of a husky and kind of a sexy, like sort of smoothness to it that I don't usually associate with metal music, but
Right.
works really well here. And I'm like, oh wow, that guy's
Second
just
reference of sexy tonight. All right.
yeah, that's right. See, the metal was sexy today, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what to tell you.
We
It
brought it
just fit.
back.
That's right.
What
Brought the sexy back.
It's funny that you say militant and patriotic, because one of the things that's funny about this particular singer, he is very spiritual, not in an organized religion way, but I believe he's got a very strong connection between himself. I believe he believes in Jesus and the Christian side of things, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's
Not like
Catholic or Protestant or whatever. I think he has, maybe it's evangelical. I don't know. I don't delve into it.
Okay.
He's not preachy. He's never overtly preachy, but
Okay.
he is overtly like, we got to stop, tearing each other apart and come together, kind of not a John Lennon-y sort of way. It's a lot
Right.
more angry sort of way.
In an angry way. Right.
Yeah.
They're tearing
But
us
yeah,
apart. Yeah.
and we can't stand for it. We
That's
can't.
right.
We won't
we gotta
survive
come
if we don't get
together.
our shit
Right.
together.
Exactly. That's it. Right. The message, like, we
Strength
can't.
in numbers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Strength in numbers will only survive if we come together. It says it right in the title.
It's on the tin.
It's on the tin. Exactly.
So
Yeah. So
this was the first song on. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say. So it was a side project. Did they do more after this, or is this like the one?
After this, Jesse came back to the band. He came back with Kill Switch Engage. He's back with Kill Switch Engage. Just in the last week, the other singer who got his own band and went his own way is now doing a side project again with this guitarist. So I feel like there's this weird we come and go thing.
Gotcha.
It's interesting. Jesse has a very metal approach, and the other singer, who happens to be a black man, has a strong. He's I don't think he's as strong a lyricist, but I think he's the better singer. Like, he has got a deeper range, and he can again scream and growl or whatever else, and he can also make your heart weep, kind of emotional tones. I don't think Jesse hits the same emotional belting. But anyway, it's the first song on this album. It's really good. It sets a lovely cadence for the whole thing, how it's going to be or whatever. Even though they dip into, there's even kind of a couple country songs on the album. They do have some acoustic, bring it down. Yeah. I don't think they've done a second Times of Grace album, but I can't swear to that. I just don't remember one. But he's now, like I said, he's back in the main band and performing well. And I had a Kill Switch Engage, I think last episode, with him singing on it. There's obviously a different sound,
Sure.
The side project versus the main deal has a different overall quality to it, but it's good stuff. It's really it's so striking to me. Every time I hear it, my blood comes up, and I'm like, yeah, we got to get together.
We get together. Yeah, no, it is. It's a very get your blood up kind of song. That's definitely
absolutely
right. Good rally music. Yeah, let's go.
But definitely, I would never think of it jingoistically. It's certainly not that kind of.
That's true.
It's still the Rebels.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But the Rebels have good drummers too.
That's right. Yeah. They know how to rock.
That's right.
All right. Speaking of rock, not at all.
Good segue.
Your song number 5. Segues are not our biz.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We get you there.
We keep trying. It's Our Song by Joe Henry.
Yes.
So this is, again, slow, very sedate. It's got some very sad strings. Like, the strings kind of leave you a little bit weepy. They tug you. They really get you kind of surprised. It's a very topical song. It's something you and I have talked about, I don't think on the show, but in our private communications, more than once. Kind of the state of our country, the state of our union, if you will. It started badly, it's ending wrong. That's a repeated
That's a good
line,
right?
From the chorus. Oh, definitely. The Willie May references. It talks about he runs into Willie Mays in a Stockport.
Home Depot in
Arizona.
Somewhere in Arizona.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Stockdale.
There you go. Scottsdale, yeah.
Shopping for garage springs. That kind of confused me a bit. That was kind of like
fair.
This is a real stretch metaphor, but it doesn't really frame the song, because the song is more about kind of look how everything is falling apart and run down. But even so, he's still got this optimistic incline.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard times. They test us, but maybe they make us better, or at least they make me better. I don't know about you.
Right. Exactly.
it's definitely a song that starts off like, "Hey man, that's Willie Mays. Hey, that's kind of sad. Hey, he's stretching out those garage springs to see if they've got the right play and bounce." And I'm like, that's a weird thing to sing a song about, man. What he's going for?
What are you after here?
But again, as he's walking through that, I think it's a weird thing in the song because the song is much deeper and broader with that little very specificity to it. That's just,
Yep.
what does that mean to you? Because I was a little bit like confused.
Yeah. Yeah, so Joe Henry is I think another on this list with Rennie Sparks, probably the other favorite songwriter of mine. And he's pretty great at doing these kind of sideways sort of narratives. Like this one, the Willie Mays thing, I'm not sure. The real meat of the story is sort of what he says in between all these kind of terrible
Right.
things that what we've the sort of the goodwill that we've squandered, sort of the terrible children that he has, that the narrator has. But yeah, and there's this weird, very specific, right? I saw Willie Mays
Evocative
at
as hell.
a
Yeah.
Scottsdale Home Depot, looking at garage door springs at the far end of the 14th row. Like, it's very
Yeah.
specific. Yes. And yeah, it's interesting. I think it's sort of it kind of pays off a little in the end when he sort of talks about him trying them, like looking for,
Yeah.
like you said, like ones that have some play and some fight, and then sort of tries to tie it all together with sort of the garage door metaphor, which is amazing. Like a really weird fucking metaphor. Like it's
Yeah.
a great. So the garage door is the metaphor, but then the spring is being like slowing it down or raising something heavy. And I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of a brilliant way to land that metaphor that I didn't see coming. And yeah, and
Left field
to
for
your
sure.
point, exactly. To your point, like just having like the weird Willie Mays reference is enough to like raise your eyebrows. But this
Yeah.
was kind of his he calls it his national anthem, which he wrote after sort of after saying in front of Harry Belafonte that he really didn't think that it was his place to write political songs, and Harry Belafonte took him to task and told him that in fact it was, and that all these other people are busy fighting, and so you should help them fight too. And so he wrote this song, which I think is kind of like a national anthem. In a way, like for the country that I live in, it seems much more telling. But yeah, it just hits on some of those things that I think are unfortunate about our
Yeah.
country in the last 20 years. This kind of the belief in our own exceptionalism seems to have got the better of us here, and this song is kind of a sad sort of testament to that, right? Or even sort of the narrator even seems sort of oblivious to it in some way,
Yeah.
despite wanting to like strive to be better, or that idea that maybe all this crazy stuff will somehow make us better, make me a better person, make me come out the other side of it. But yeah, I don't know. I know Joe Henry's a big
Just
baseball fan, and I'm not. So the Willie Mays reference we
yeah.
could just tie to being the big baseball fan. But I think about this song a lot, and kind of like the imagery in it is very graphic. I think there's that one where there's something about me standing in a tower looking across what soon will be beaches too, which I thought is just a great way
Yeah.
to sort of like a great like an aside to sort of the erosion of the coastline. Just just a number of things like that sort of point to those things without like beating me over the head with them. And then give me this kind of weird Willie Mays metaphor to struggle with to make sense of it. So I like it because it makes me think. I'm not 100% sure that all the parts work, together as much as maybe they should, but that's okay. It makes me think.
It's
And
interesting. It's a juxtaposition between like this very not relatable, but this very in your face piece of Willie Mays, with the springs, and this
right,
much broader.
Yeah.
The exceptionalism. That's actually, I was thinking about that. We have come to expect it, so we didn't earn it anymore.
That's right.
We are exceptional just because we are, damn it, not because we do exceptional things.
That's right. I'm exceptional because I'm an American, not because America is exceptional. Right?
Exactly.
You're like, well, wait a minute. What
There's
happened?
no effort.
Yes, exactly. Right. I'm exceptional because it is my birthright, not because I did anything to earn it.
Right.
Which,
right. And that's where we went wrong.
That does seem to be part of his message. Right?
Does he have a more famous relation? I feel like I heard of him, but as he's somebody's cousin something.
His wife is Madonna's sister.
Ah, okay.
He's married to Melanie Ciccone, who is Madonna's sister. Yeah.
That's no great way for him to be identified, but it was in the back of my head.
Okay,
I know him from somewhere. Right. It's not from him.
She did cover one of his songs, as he likes to say. He says it's his song called "Stop." I recorded it as a tango, and she recorded it as a hit. It's but we got paid for it. But yeah,
it's a little bitter. Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's got to be hard to be to live in the shadow of Madonna. Want to talk about a big shadow?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've done it again. We've talked about 10 songs.
So we have here now 50 songs and about 10 hours of entertainment for our listeners.
That's amazing.
I hope it's entertainment. I think that's the first word I was choosing.
Right, exactly. It's true. We hope.
And frankly, this train is going to keep rolling whether you're listening or not. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
It's not the tree that falls in the woods. It still makes noise whether anybody's paying attention, because we don't care. We just keep talking.
We're making noise because that's what we're doing. So
we're having fun.
That's right. I'm having fun. I'm having fun. No, I learn some cool stuff every time we do this. So I learn new bands. I learn new music. Learn some weird things about my own musical taste as we go. So yeah.
It's funny when you get someone else's lens. Yeah,
it is. It's very different.
To examine things.
Yeah, no, I think as I'm putting things on the list now, I'm like, oh, I'm going to put this on the list. I'm like, oh, that's much like these other things that I put. It's just, it begins to become apparent. My predilections are getting harder to pretend aren't there. I'm like, oh no, I have very specific tastes. Yes. All right.
I still have some more things I haven't exposed you to, so we'll see. Maybe episode 6.
Likewise.
Whip out the MC front a lot. That'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, we will do it again next month. Join us again for 10 more.
Same bat time.
Same bat channel.
10 more.
All right.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye now.
Good whatever.
A Bandersnatch production.